Welcome, geniuses. I'm Gene, your best buddy for A-levels. In this channel, we'll bring you to explore the secret formula behind success. Who is Joyce Hu? She claims to be 150 centimeters tall. Everyone knows that's a lie. She's much, much taller. She's Sarawakian, but she has never climbed a tree, so she's no different from most Sarawakians. And finally, as you guessed from the title, Joyce Hu is currently studying psychology at Cambridge. Let's talk a bit about how you chose your A-level subjects.
The university doesn't require students to take any specific subject, but some subjects are indeed more helpful than others. As suggested by Cambridge admission website, biology and mathematics are highly recommended as students are going to learn extensively about biology, for example, about your brain structure, hormones, neuroscience and evolutionary biology, while statistical maths is used extensively in the work of research. While taking A-level psychology definitely gives you a good foundation to the course. You're not at a disadvantage if you do not take it. I myself didn't have the choice of taking psychology during my A-level course, but it didn't affect my application so much because the interview and admission tests were adjusted to place students of different backgrounds on a level ground.
So Joyce, do you have any advice for students who are drafting a psychology personal statement right now?
A personal statement is usually made up of a few elements. These are usually your experience or your personal account, academic or intellectual initiative, which usually means your academic reading, and also your current situation or your achievements, which usually means your A-level studies, your co-curricular activities or commitments, and even your hobbies. So, sounds easy, right? But many students struggle to write a piece of good personal statement because you often have too many to write and they do not know how to pick the relevant points in order to produce a piece of coherent and appealing personal statement. So I'll talk more specifically about the elements and we'll try to write a piece of draft together in the end. First, you can share your experience or personal account that gave you an insight to the field of psychology. It can be a volunteering or a job shadowing experience at a healthcare center, orphanage, hospital, NGO, and so on. For example, I talked about my volunteering experience in an autistic education center, what I observed, and how curiosity has led me to my research about autism spectrum disorder, ASD. If you do not have such experience, worry not. Your experience can even be a drama or a story or something that happens to your friends or families that spark your intellectual curiosity for psychology. Always remember to add your reflection or feeling to the experience. Second, you can write about journals or books or even a few experts that you admired. This part shows your intellectual curiosity and initiative. Always give your thoughts on the issue that you're talking about. It can be a criticism, a question, or even a stance that you took. Things as long as it comes from you. Here are some topics and books which I personally find interesting. But here's a reminder, do not write about a specific book unless you have read it thoroughly and understood it. Because your interviewer will very likely read your personal statement and he or she will be very eager to discuss with you the book that you have included in your personal statement. So please don't disappoint your interviewer by including a book that you have not finished or read. Also, other than books, magazine publishers like Psychology Today, Psychology Review, and British Psychological Society often publish interesting articles which you can refer to as well. Third, though this is entirely optional, you can talk about your A-level subjects as long as you can find the link or application between your A-level subject and psychology. For example, biology helps me to understand the mechanisms behind neural activities and give me knowledge on conducting field research, so I include biology in my personal statement. Studying maths as well helps me in understanding statistical concepts like heritability and genetic variation. You can even criticize a subject after learning psychology, such as the assumption in economics theory saying that every consumer is rational and they spend to gain the most utility. We all know this is wrong, and this has been proven wrong by behavioral psychologists and economists. You can give one of their names if you know them, like Daniel Kahneman. All that said, it is absolutely fine to omit subjects that you don't think are important or are relevant. So don't force yourself to write every subject. Fourth, you may include some achievements in your academic studies, extracurricular activities, and hobbies. Selectively highlight those achievements that are relevant to your course or psychology. For example, language has been an all-time favorite topic of psychologists. So if you come from a multilingual background or are committed to public speaking, poetry, and etc., you can explain how this skill has helped you to communicate ideas among your community members, for example, or to bridge cultural differences and understand people of different backgrounds better. All that said, the central idea is actually very simple. Whatever element you're putting in your personal statement, link it back to your course of interest, which is psychology. If psychology itself is too broad a subject or topic for you, it's even better to choose a topic of your interest in psychology so you can narrow down the scope of your interest and write a personal statement that specifically revolves around it. Okay, so now I'll try to draft a personal statement based on the tips that I have just given. So say you're interested in gender differences. So why? Because you grew up in a conservative Chinese family and experienced gender bias as a girl. So here you can see personal experience, tick off. When you grow older, learning biology in school gives you insight to the genetic differences between male and female and the way genetic differences contribute to behavioral and emotional variations. Studying humanities subjects like sociology or history, if you take them, also have made you more knowledgeable towards the evolution of gender roles in history. So here you can elaborate a bit about your A-level subjects. Then you start digging into gender issues by reading or doing research, and I don't know, maybe by joining feminist movement, etc. At this point, you can slip in some research papers or articles that you have read and give genuine thoughts about them. Remember, be genuine, be honest, don't include something that you don't understand or you have not read. Lastly, insert your achievements to add positive impressions about yourself. Some students like to end their personal statement with an aspiration or wish to study in the university, but I personally do not do that because the whole point of writing your personal statement is to get you into a good university. So maybe it's better to not waste your word count on that statement.
That's some super detailed and heavy content you just dropped. Can you tell us a little about your entrance test?
The entrance test, also known as PBS-AA, is a pre-interview assessment given to all PBS applicants prior to the interview. But for those having interview outside of the UK, like in Malaysia, we set for the test after our interview. Anyway, it's still called a pre-interview assessment. There are 2 sessions in this paper, and session 1 includes 3 parts, which are part A, B, and C. Part A is TSA, in full term also known as Thinking Skill Assessment, which in essence is an intelligence test, and it looks similar to many IQ test papers in the market. You can easily search for practice online just by typing TSA and you can practice on them. Parts B and C are Maths and Biology and Reading and Comprehension. You only need to choose one part to answer. Naturally, if you have been more on the science track, go for Maths and Biology. A-levels knowledge for biology is required, but maths tests more on your thinking process and logic. For reading and comprehension, I'll suggest those who have read a lot. For example, students who are taking social sciences in A-level or those who have been trained for SAT or SCT to choose this assessment. Session 2 is an essay writing task. The purpose is to assess an applicant's ability to think analytically, produce a coherent argument, and write with clarity and precision. I took this word by word from the paper itself. So the demand here is pretty clear. It is not meant to assess your amount of knowledge, but again is to see your ability at presenting your argument using the evidence or the knowledge you have already had in your hand. Personally, I feel like this is my weakest part, and I'll talk about my hindsight view and reflection later.
How'd your interview go, by the way?
I read in depth on topics that I wrote in my personal statement because interviewers usually expect a professional and radical discussion between you and him or her on these topics. So again, don't write anything you're unfamiliar with in your personal statement. Be genuine, be honest. Everyone's interview will be adjusted according to the subjects he or she takes in A-level. So I also did a thorough revision on AS topics and a review on A2 topics that I was yet to learn. It was indeed helpful. At first, my interviewer and I had a brief discussion on some psychological topics, and then later he asked me to analyze a graph and interpret a formula that is used by psychologists in their research about genetic and environmental influences. Prior knowledge about these topics are not required, but what interviews would like to see is your ability to digest the information and generate output or answers quickly. One little tip, you can search about your interviewer beforehand, understand his or her career and his or her field of research, so you can kind of predict the kind of questions that you're more likely to be asked in your interview. Also, find someone to practice and do mock interviews with you. You can ask for help from your subject teachers, tutors, peers, and even students studying in Cambridge through societies like Malaysian Student Society, KUMAS, and others.
For a second there, I thought you said they should find someone to mock them. My bad. Anything you wish you had known before you applied?
For the admission test, I wished I could have saved time on binging information and knowledge and instead spend more time on brainstorming and brushing up the knowledge I already have. In hindsight, I think one should also read more specifically on topics that are still on the edge of discovery in science and psychology, particularly the research and the implications to the society and to every human being. You can get a checklist of topics from a psychology textbook or course guidelines. Watch some debate shows, I'll say, or TED Talks, and write short responses to your tutors for marking and comments. These efforts really help warm up your engine for critical writing tasks, especially if you're not used to writing in A-level.
Any final advice or encouragement for those who are applying for psychology at Cambridge?
Just keep an open heart and learn from the process. Don't be deterred by the early UCAS deadline, interviews, and assessments. Instead, you can think of them as a self-enriching learning experience, and you definitely gain more than those who don't apply to Oxbridge. My interview with the Cambridge professor was tense and mind-boggling, but it was also fun and sometimes even funny. I've enjoyed my interview very, very much, and I wished you'd be able to enjoy yours and learn from this process as well.
Thank you very much, Joyce. I'm sure this will be very helpful for students. Joyce H, everybody. That's all for today's video. If you're interested in more genuine sharing by other geniuses, please subscribe to our channel and don't forget to turn on the notification bell. Ding dong. Genie will see you in our next adventure. Bye-bye.